I'm Amanda Miller, 34, and I never expected to see my family's shocked faces at my mansion's door after 10 years of exclusion from every reunion. Their eyes widened as they took in the marble foyer behind me, a stark contrast from when they last saw me, broke and heartbroken after their final rejection. The pain from that day still lingers, even amid my success. Before I tell you what I said when I opened that door, let me know where you're watching from. Don't forget to like and subscribe if you've ever had to prove your worth to people who should have believed in you from the start. I grew up in a modest, two-story home in suburban Chicago, where my early life seemed pretty normal. My dad worked as an accountant while my mom taught second grade at the local elementary school. We weren't rich, but we had enough. What set me apart was my love for computers. I was coding simple programs by age 12 while other kids were playing video games. My parents didn't really understand my passion, but they supported it in their own way, buying me programming books when they could afford them. School came easily to me. While other students struggled with math and science, I thrived. My teachers often told my parents I had extraordinary potential. I was that quiet girl in the back of the classroom who always had the answer but rarely raised her hand. I preferred letting my work speak for itself. Everything changed when I was 16. I came home from debate club practice to find my mom crying at the kitchen table. Dad had left. Just packed his things and moved out while I was at school. The divorce was messy, bitter, and left emotional scars that would shape our family dynamics for years to come. My father moved to Seattle for a fresh start, becoming a distant figure who sent birthday cards with $50 checks but never really stayed involved in my life. Mom struggled financially after the divorce. She picked up extra tutoring sessions and summer school teaching to make ends meet. I got a part-time job at the local library to help with expenses and continued focusing on my studies, determined to earn scholarships that would ease our burden. Then came Richard. Mom met him at a school fundraiser 18 months after the divorce. He was handsome, charming, and most importantly, wealthy. Richard owned several car dealerships across Illinois and lived in a sprawling house in the affluent North Shore. Their whirlwind romance moved quickly, and within 6 months, they were married. Suddenly, we moved from our modest home to Richard's mansion, complete with a pool, home theater, and 5 bedrooms. With Richard came his daughter, Brittany. She was my age, but my complete opposite, popular, outgoing, and obsessed with appearances. From day one, Brittany made it clear she wasn't interested in having a stepsister. Behind her perfect smile and designer clothes lurked a manipulative personality that only I seemed to notice. "Daddy bought these for me," she'd say, showing off new diamond earrings when Richard was in earshot. Then, when we were alone, "He'll never spend that kind of money on you. You're not really family." I tried telling Mom about these comments, but she was too enamored with her new life to see the truth. "She's just adjusting, honey. Give her time," Mom would say, dismissing my concerns with a wave of her newly manicured hand. The first major family gathering after Mom's remarriage was Thanksgiving. Richard's extended family would be there. His parents, his brother's family, and various cousins. I was nervous but excited, especially because I'd just received news of a full scholarship to MIT. After years of hard work, my dreams were coming true, and I couldn't wait to share my achievement. I spent hours getting ready, wearing a simple blue dress I'd saved up specifically for this occasion. As I applied the final touches to my makeup, I rehearsed how I'd announce my news when Mom asked about college plans over dinner. The house was buzzing with activity when I came downstairs. Richard's family were clearly from money, designer clothes, perfect hair, and conversations about country clubs and European vacations. I felt out of place but reminded myself that I belonged there too. When I entered the dining room, Brittany was already working the room, charming everyone with stories about her cheerleading team's regional championship. I stood awkwardly near the appetizer table, waiting for Mom to introduce me to everyone. She was too busy playing the perfect hostess, refilling wine glasses and laughing at Richard's brother's jokes. Finally, dinner was served. I sat down, heart pounding with anticipation about sharing my news. Just as Mom started asking everyone about their plans, Brittany accidentally bumped into me while reaching for the salt, spilling red wine all over my new dress. "Oh my God, I'm so sorry," she gasped, eyes wide with false concern. But I caught the slight smirk before she masked it with worry. As I stood there, mortified, with crimson liquid seeping through the fabric, Richard's mother tooted disapprovingly. "Perhaps you should go change, dear," she suggested, as though I'd orchestrated the whole incident. By the time I returned in an old sweater and jeans, the only other clean clothes I had, the conversation had moved on. When I tried to steer it back to college plans, Richard cut in. "Amanda got into some school up north," he said dismissively. "MIT," I corrected quietly. "MIT?" Richard's brother raised an eyebrow. "Impressive. But what will you do with that? The real money's in business, not sitting behind a computer all day." "She got a scholarship," Mom added, but her enthusiasm seemed dampened by the lukewarm response from the table. "Well, Brittany's been accepted early decision to Northwestern," Richard announced proudly. Following in my footsteps. The table erupted in congratulations for Brittany, who soaked up the attention while shooting me a triumphant look. My full ride to one of the world's top technical universities was completely overshadowed by Brittany's admission to her father's alma mater. After dinner, I overheard Richard talking to his father in the study. "Book smarts don't translate to real-world success," he was saying. "Amanda's smart enough, but she lacks Brittany's social intelligence. That's what really matters in business." I felt like an outsider in what was supposed to be my home. No one asked about MIT again. No one congratulated me. My achievement, the culmination of years of hard work, meant nothing to these people who now constituted my family. I slipped out early, telling Mom I had a headache. She barely looked away from her guests to acknowledge me. Sitting in my car in the driveway, tears streaming down my face, I made a promise to myself. I would succeed on my own terms, with or without their approval. Little did I know this was just the first of many rejections to come. MIT was everything I'd hoped for and more. The campus buzzed with innovation, and for the first time, I was surrounded by people who spoke my language code. Despite the intellectual stimulation, financial struggles were a constant companion. My scholarship covered tuition, but Boston's living expenses stretched my budget to the breaking point. I worked part-time at the campus IT department and picked up freelance coding gigs whenever possible. Calls from home grew increasingly rare. Mom would check in occasionally, but our conversations felt superficial. She'd talk about charity events she attended with Richard or Brittany's latest accomplishments, never asking much about my studies or my life. When I tried sharing my excitement about a programming competition I'd won, she listened politely before changing the subject to Brittany's sorority fundraiser. The first Christmas break after starting college, I was eager to go home despite the Thanksgiving disaster. I'd worked extra shifts to buy thoughtful gifts for everyone, hoping to bridge the growing gap. 3 days before I was set to fly back, Mom called. "Honey, I'm so sorry, but we've decided to take a last-minute cruise for the holidays. Richard surprised us with tickets. You understand, right? You can stay in the dorms." My heart sank. "The dorm's close for winter break, Mom. Everyone has to leave." "Oh." She paused. "Well, maybe one of your friends can put you up? Or you could get a hotel for a few days with your scholarship money." I didn't tell her that my scholarship didn't work that way, or that I had less than $100 in my checking account after buying their gifts. "Sure, Mom. I'll figure something out." I ended up spending Christmas in the empty apartment of a professor who was visiting family overseas. He needed someone to water his plants and feed his cat, and I needed a place to stay. On Christmas morning, scrolling through social media, I saw photos that shattered any illusion I still harbored about my place in the family. There was no cruise. There was a family gathering at Richard's parents' lake house. Everyone was there. Brittany, Mom, Richard, all the extended family. Everyone except me. The photos showed them opening presents around a massive Christmas tree, enjoying a feast prepared by a private chef, and playing games by the fireplace. My mother looked happier than I'd seen her in years, seemingly unbothered by my absence. I turned off my phone and cried myself to sleep on my professor's couch, the cat my only companion. It was during this lonely holiday that I met Samantha. She was a computer science major like me, stuck on campus, because her family lived in South Korea and she couldn't afford the flight home. We bonded over convenience store, microwave dinners, and marathon coding sessions. Samantha became the sister I never had in Brittany. Supportive, kind, and genuinely interested in my success. By spring semester, my class project caught the attention of several professors. I developed an algorithm that significantly improved facial recognition accuracy while requiring less processing power, valuable for mobile applications. My advisor encouraged me to present at a tech conference where industry leaders would be attending. The conference coincided with my cousin Rachel's wedding. When I called to explain why I couldn't attend, the response was immediate and harsh. "This family has done everything for you, and you can't even show up for important events," Mom said, her voice cold. Rachel specifically asked if you would be there. "Mom, this is a huge opportunity for my career. There will be recruiters from Google, Apple, all the major tech companies. There you go again, always putting yourself first. Rachel will be devastated." I wanted to point out that Rachel and I had spoken maybe 3 times in our lives, and that she'd probably only invited me because Mom insisted, but I bit my tongue. Later that week, I received a group text that had clearly been sent to me by mistake. It was from Richard to the entire family, discussing summer plans for the annual family reunion at his lake house. Dates confirmed for July 15th to 22nd. Everyone's on board. Amanda will be at some tech internship anyway, so no need to include her in the planning. I scrolled up through the chat history and discovered this group text had been active for months. They discussed Thanksgiving plans, Christmas arrangements, weekend get-togethers, all while deliberately excluding me. There were even jokes about my absence. "At least we won't have to listen to Amanda talk about computers all night," from Uncle Bob, followed by laughing emojis from several family members, including my own mother. The confirmation that my exclusion was intentional, not circumstantial, hit me like a physical blow. That night, working through my hurt and anger, I channeled my emotions into what would eventually become my breakthrough app. If my family didn't want me, I would create something that millions of people would want. The tech conference proved transformative. My presentation caught the attention of several major companies, and I secured a prestigious summer internship at a Silicon Valley startup. Meanwhile, the family reunion photos appeared on social media, everyone smiling, boating on the lake, sharing meals on the deck, creating memories I wasn't part of. When graduation day arrived, I scanned the crowd for Mom's face, still hoping despite everything that she might surprise me by showing up. She didn't. But Samantha's parents did, having flown all the way from Seoul. They brought me flowers, took dozens of photos, and insisted on treating me to a celebration dinner. They even gave me a card signed, "Your Korean family," which made me cry with gratitude. As I accepted my diploma, I realized that family isn't always determined by blood or legal documents. Sometimes, it's found in the people who show up when it matters most. After graduation, I landed an entry-level position at a mid-sized tech company in San Francisco. The job paid well enough to afford a tiny apartment with 2 roommates, but my real work happened after hours. Every night, I'd come home and work on my app until 2 or 3 a.m., fueled by coffee and determination. My social life was practically non-existent, but I didn't care. I was building something that mattered. My app, Secure Space, was a privacy-focused cloud storage solution with an algorithm that could detect and prevent unauthorized access attempts before they happened. In a world increasingly concerned about data breaches, I knew it had potential. 6 months into my job, I met Tyler Davidson, a venture capitalist who was visiting our company for a potential investment. During a team presentation, I made a suggestion that caught his attention. Afterward, he approached me. "That was an interesting perspective," he said. "Do you always think outside the box like that?" That brief interaction led to coffee, where I cautiously mentioned my app. Tyler asked to see a demo, and by the end of our meeting, he was visibly excited. "This has serious potential," he said. "Let me introduce you to some people." Tyler became my mentor, guiding me through the complex world of startups and venture capital. With his connections, I secured my first investment, $250,000, from an angel investor who believed in my vision. It wasn't enough to quit my day job, but it allowed me to hire a part-time developer to help accelerate progress. Around this time, I received a distressed call from Mom. Her perfect new life was crumbling. Richard's dealerships were struggling after a major recession hit the auto industry. They'd had to downsize from the mansion to a still luxurious, but significantly smaller home. More concerning, Mom hinted that Richard had been making some questionable investment decisions, trying to recoup losses. "I don't know what to do, Amanda," she said, sounding more vulnerable than I'd heard in years. "Everything's falling apart." Despite our strained relationship, I offered to help. "I could fly home for a weekend, Mom. We could talk through options, maybe look at your finances together." There was a long pause. "Richard wouldn't like that," she finally said. "He thinks this is just a temporary setback. Besides, what would you know about real business problems? You work with computers." Her dismissal stung, but not as much as what happened next. Through casual conversation with a former high school classmate, I learned my grandfather was celebrating his 80th birthday. The entire family was gathering at Richard's brother's house, just 15 minutes from where I grew up. No one had mentioned it to me. Against my better judgment, I decided to show up. I bought a thoughtful gift. A digital photo frame I'd preloaded with restored versions of his old fishing photos, plus a generous gift card to his favorite sporting goods store. I dressed carefully in a professional but approachable outfit and drove to the party with knots in my stomach. The shocked looks when I walked in told me everything I needed to know. I wasn't supposed to be there. Mom recovered quickly, giving me a stiff hug before introducing me to distant relatives as though I was a casual acquaintance rather than her daughter. Grandfather seemed genuinely happy to see me, which provided small comfort. As the evening progressed, I overheard a conversation that wasn't meant for my ears. In the kitchen, Brittany was talking to Richard and two aunts. "She's only here because she heard Grandpa has updated his will," Brittany was saying. "She hasn't bothered with any of us for years, and suddenly she shows up? Please. She's always been calculating." "Well, she did always have good grades," Richard joked, and they all laughed. "I heard her little computer job isn't going well," Brittany continued. "She's probably hoping to reconnect now that she needs family connections." Classic Amanda only thinks about herself. I stepped into the kitchen, unable to listen anymore. "Is that what you all think of me?" I asked, my voice surprisingly steady despite the emotion building in my chest. "That I'm here for money?" The guilty looks confirmed everything. Mom appeared in the doorway, concern on her face not for me, I realized, but for the uncomfortable scene unfolding at her father's party. "Amanda, maybe we should talk about this another time," she suggested quietly. "When would that be, Mom?" "When I'm actually invited to a family event. Because that hasn't happened in years." My voice was rising now, years of hurt bubbling to the surface. "You're always busy with your computer stuff," Richard interjected. "We just assumed you wouldn't be interested." "You assumed? Or you decided?" "Because I've seen the group chats I'm excluded from. I've seen the holiday gatherings I wasn't invited to. You've deliberately pushed me out of this family, and I want to know why." The kitchen had gone silent. Family members peered in from the living room, drawn by the commotion. "You changed after college," Mom said weakly. "You became so focused on your career." "Because my career was the only thing that didn't reject me." I was nearly shouting now. Every time I accomplished something, This family made me feel like it wasn't enough. Every time I reached out, I was an afterthought. Do you know how that feels? Brittany rolled her eyes. Always so dramatic. This is exactly why. Why would Brittany? Why you've poisoned everyone against me since the day we met? Why you've made sure I'm excluded from everything? What did I ever do to you except exist? The room fell silent. Then Richard stepped forward, his face hard. I think you should leave, Amanda. You're ruining your grandfather's party with this spectacle. I looked around at the faces of my family, some uncomfortable, others openly hostile, a few confused. But not one person stood up for me. Not even Mom. I won't bother you again, I said quietly, placing Grandpa's gift on the counter. Any of you. That night, I made a decision that would alter the course of my life. I would cut contact completely. No more reaching out, no more hoping for inclusion, no more disappointment. I would pour everything into my company, into building a life so successful they couldn't ignore it, not because I needed their approval anymore, but because I needed to prove to myself that I was worthy of the success they'd always made me feel I didn't deserve. For the next 18 months, I worked harder than I ever had. 18-hour days became my norm. I moved from my shared apartment to a small studio closer to work to eliminate commute time. Every waking moment was dedicated to secure space, which was gaining traction among privacy-conscious users. The hard work paid off. A tech magazine featured Secure Space in a roundup of privacy applications to watch, bringing a flood of new users. This attention led to meetings with serious investors. After an intense period of pitching and negotiation, I closed a $1 million funding round. Ironically, the final papers were signed the same day I received a text from Mom, the first communication in months. We're having the annual family reunion next weekend at the lake house. Don't bother coming. It's just immediate family. I didn't respond. I didn't need to. That chapter of my life was closed, and a new one filled with possibility and success on my own terms, was just beginning. The next 5 years transformed my life in ways I could never have imagined. Secure Space evolved from a promising startup to an industry leader in digital privacy. Our user base grew exponentially, especially after a series of high-profile data breaches at other companies sent security-conscious consumers looking for alternatives. As the company expanded, so did my living arrangements. I moved from my cramped studio to a comfortable one-bedroom condo overlooking the bay. 2 years later, as our valuation hit $25 million, I upgraded to a luxury apartment in Pacific Heights. Finally, after we closed a $100 million funding round valuing the company at over $500 million, I purchased my dream home, a modern mansion in the hills with panoramic views, 6 bedrooms, an infinity pool, and a home office with technology that would make MIT proud. The house was far too large for one person, but after years of cramped living, I reveled in the space. Each room I decorated represented freedom. Freedom from financial worry, from cramped quarters, and from seeking approval that never came. Yet despite professional fulfillment, I couldn't ignore the emptiness that occasionally crept in during quiet moments. Success had given me everything except the one thing money couldn't buy: family connection. The hurt from my family's rejection had hardened into a protective shell around my heart. At the suggestion of my executive coach, I started seeing Dr. Larson, a therapist specializing in family trauma. Our weekly sessions became a safe space to unpack years of rejection and abandonment. Your family's treatment says more about them than it does about you, Dr. Larson noted during one particularly emotional session. Have you considered that their rejection might stem from their own insecurities? This perspective shift was revolutionary. I'd always assumed I wasn't good enough for my family. What if, instead, my potential had threatened them? What if Brittany's hostility came from fear that I might outshine her? What if Richard resented my intelligence because it reminded him of his own academic shortcomings? Understanding the dynamics didn't erase the pain, but it helped me carry it differently. I was no longer defined by their rejection. Dating proved challenging. My success intimidated many men, and my trust issues created walls that few had the patience to scale. I went on dozens of first dates that led nowhere. The few relationships that progressed beyond a few weeks inevitably faltered when they discovered my unavailability, emotional and literal, given my workaholic tendencies. Then I met David at a cybersecurity conference. He was presenting on ethical hacking, brilliant, humble, and refreshingly direct. Unlike others who were impressed by my company's valuation, David challenged my encryption protocol during the Q&A session. Our debate continued through coffee, dinner, and eventually a relationship that moved at its own unhurried pace. David understood walls because he had his own. Raised by a single mother who died during his college years, he'd navigated life without family support. He never pushed me to open up faster than I was ready, and when I finally shared the full story of my family estrangement, his response was simply to hold me while I cried, no platitudes, no forced silver linings. As my personal life stabilized, I discovered the joy of creating chosen family. My executive team became more than colleagues. We celebrated birthdays, supported each other through personal challenges, and spent holidays together. My assistant, Rachel, introduced me to her sprawling Italian-American family, who adopted me into their Sunday dinners without question. Samantha, still my closest friend, relocated to San Francisco to join SecureSpace as our head of user experience, bringing her warmth and loyalty back into my daily life. During our third year of operation, I started a tradition that healed something in me, Friend Thanksgiving. I opened my home to employees, friends, and acquaintances who, for whatever reason, couldn't be with family during the holiday. That first year, 15 people attended. By the fifth year, the guest list had grown to over 50, a beautiful tapestry of backgrounds, stories, and connections. "This is better than any family holiday I've ever had," Samantha whispered to me during our fourth Friend Thanksgiving, as we watched our eclectic group laughing and sharing stories. "You've created something special here, Amanda." She was right. In building this community, I'd found what my biological family never provided: unconditional acceptance. Occasionally, I would glimpse my former family through social media. Mom had made her profiles private, but Brittany's influencer aspirations kept hers public. I learned that Richard's financial troubles had apparently worsened. The lake house had been sold. Brittany's posts became increasingly focused on promoting various products, skincare, diet teas, fitness programs, with desperate-sounding discount codes and pleas to support small businesses. One post caught my attention: Brittany posing with luxury shopping bags, captioned, "Shopping spree courtesy of family connections. So blessed to have people who support my dreams. Hashtag entrepreneur life, hashtag family business." I recognized the background. It was a mid-range mall, not the luxury shopping district she was implying. The bags were from accessible brands, not the high-end labels she tagged. The carefully constructed image of success rang hollow, reminding me of the family's emphasis on appearances over substance. I felt an unexpected emotion: pity. While I'd built something real, they were still constructing facades. While I'd found genuine connections, they were still trading on superficial relationships. The realization didn't bring satisfaction, just a quiet acknowledgement that our paths had diverged in ways that reflected our core values. By my 34th birthday, I could honestly say I felt content. Not just successful, but at peace with my journey. The pain of family rejection had transformed into appreciation for the authentic relationships I'd cultivated. The insecurity about my worth had evolved into confidence in my abilities. The desperate need for approval had been replaced by an internal compass guided by my own values. "You've done remarkable work," Dr. Larson told me during what would be our final regular session. "Not just professionally, but personally. You've built a life most people only dream of." I used to think success would make my family regret rejecting me, I admitted. Now I realize success has nothing to do with proving anything to them. It's about becoming the person I was always meant to be. As I left her office that day, I felt lighter than I had in years. I wasn't healed perfectly, there would always be scars, but I was whole. Complete in myself, surrounded by people who chose me as deliberately as I chose them. I hadn't spoken to my biological family in years, and for the first time, that fact didn't ache like an open wound. Life had settled into a fulfilling rhythm. Which is why the email that appeared in my inbox the following Thursday morning was so unexpected. I was reviewing quarterly projections with my CFO when the notification appeared on my phone, an email from a cousin I hadn't spoken to in years, Jessica Miller. My heart skipped a beat when I saw the name. Jessica had been one of the few family members who had never been outright cruel, though she hadn't stood up for me either. "Everything okay?" my CFO asked, noticing my distraction. "Yes, just need a minute," I replied, trying to maintain my professional composure while my past came knocking. "Let's reconvene after lunch." Alone in my office, I stared at the notification for several minutes before opening the email. The subject line read simply, "Congratulations. Dear Amanda," it began. "I saw your feature in Forbes last month and wanted to reach out. Your success is incredible, and I'm genuinely happy for you. I know we haven't spoken in years, and there are good reasons for that on your end. I'm not writing to excuse anything or to ask for anything, just to say that I'm proud of what you've accomplished. Sincerely, Jessica." The simplicity and unexpectedness of the message left me unsure how to respond. I forwarded it to David with a question mark, then called Dr. Larson for an emergency session. "What's your gut telling you?" she asked after I'd explained the situation. "That it's suspicious," I admitted. "Nobody from my family has contacted me in years, and suddenly Jessica reaches out right after I'm featured in Forbes? That's a reasonable concern given your history," Dr. Larson acknowledged. "But I'm also hearing curiosity in your voice. Part of you wants to know why she's reaching out now." She was right. Despite my suspicion, I was curious. After careful consideration, I crafted a brief, guarded response. "Jessica, thank you for your message. It was unexpected but appreciated. I hope you're well. Amanda." Her reply came within hours, longer and more revealing than her initial email. "Amanda, thank you for responding. I wasn't sure you would, and you have every right to ignore me after how the family has treated you. The truth is, I've wanted to reach out for years, but lacked the courage. Seeing your success made me realize how wrong we all were. There's so much you don't know about what's happened since you left. The stories Brittany and Richard told about you, the way they painted you as the villain who abandoned the family. I believed them for too long, and I'm ashamed of that now. The family is falling apart, Amanda. Richard's investments failed catastrophically. He dragged several family members into his schemes, including my parents. Most of us have either lost our homes or are close to it. Brittany's influencer career is mostly smoke and mirrors. Aunt Lauren declared bankruptcy last year. Uncle Bob is facing fraud charges for some desperate attempt to recoup losses. Your mom. She's not doing well. Health issues, no insurance since Richard let it lapse. I know this isn't your problem to solve. I'm not asking you to help. I just thought you deserved to know the truth after years of lies. If you never want to contact me again, I understand completely. Jessica." I read the email multiple times, trying to process the flood of information. My family, the ones who had made me feel small and insignificant, were struggling. The carefully constructed image they had maintained was crumbling. And apparently, they had been spreading lies about me all these years. I showed the email to David that evening over dinner. "What are you thinking?" he asked after reading it. "I don't know what to think," I admitted. "Part of me feels vindicated. They rejected me, made me feel worthless, and now their perfect lives are falling apart. Another part feels sad, especially about Mom's health issues. And a third part is suspicious about why Jessica is really reaching out now." "All valid feelings," David said, taking my hand across the table. "You don't have to decide anything tonight." Over the next week, Jessica and I exchanged several more emails. She provided details about the family's downfall. Richard had leveraged everything on a real estate development that failed spectacularly. He'd convinced several family members to invest, promising guaranteed returns. When it collapsed, so did their financial security. Mom had been diagnosed with an autoimmune condition requiring expensive treatments, but without insurance, she was struggling to get proper care. In my next therapy session, I grappled with conflicting emotions. I spent years being treated like I wasn't good enough, I told Dr. Larson. Now they're all struggling and part of me thinks they deserve it. Does that make me a terrible person? It makes you human, she replied. They hurt you deeply and repeatedly. It's natural to feel some satisfaction when people who hurt us face consequences. The question is, what do you want to do with these feelings? That was the heart of it. What did I want? Revenge? Reconciliation? Distance? The more I thought about it, the clearer it became that what I wanted most was peace, not just the absence of conflict, but true internal peace about my family history. After 2 weeks of careful consideration and many conversations with David and my closest friends, I made a decision. I would respond with compassion but maintain firm boundaries. I wouldn't rush to solve their problems or open myself up to further hurt, but I wouldn't turn my back on them entirely either. I wrote to Jessica, I appreciate your honesty about the family situation. It can't have been easy to reach out, and I respect your courage in doing so. I'm sorry to hear about Mom's health issues. While I'm not ready to jump back into family dynamics, I would be open to a conversation about what happened and why. If you're willing, I'd like to meet in person. Neutral ground where we can talk openly. Jessica responded enthusiastically, suggesting she could come to San Francisco. But something in her eagerness made me cautious. I countered with a different proposal. Actually, I think it would be better if you brought a few family members to my home. I'd like to have this conversation once, with whoever is genuinely interested in rebuilding a relationship based on truth and mutual respect. Her response revealed more than she perhaps intended. Everyone would be interested in seeing you. Your mom, of course, and Richard has always regretted how things unfolded. Brittany talks about you all the time. Even Uncle Bob and Aunt Lauren have mentioned wanting to reconnect. The sudden enthusiasm from people who had actively excluded me for years confirmed my suspicions. This wasn't just about reconciliation. They wanted something. Still, I agreed to the meeting, setting a date for the following month. Whatever their motives, I was ready to face them on my terms, in my space, with the strength that comes from knowing your own worth. Are you sure about this? David asked when I told him about the planned meeting. I can be here if you want support. I considered his offer seriously. Having him present would provide emotional backup, but this was a conversation I needed to have independently. I appreciate that, but I think I need to do this alone, I decided. They're coming to my home, on my terms. I'm not the same vulnerable person they pushed around before. In the weeks leading up to the meeting, I took practical precautions. I had my security system upgraded and cameras installed. I asked my assistant to schedule a check-in call midway through the visit as an excuse to end things if necessary. I rehearsed what I wanted to say and, more importantly, the boundaries I needed to maintain. As the day approached, I felt surprisingly calm. I wasn't the desperate young woman seeking approval anymore. I was Amanda Miller, CEO of a successful tech company, a woman who had built a life and found happiness without them. Whatever happened at this meeting couldn't take that away from me. The morning they were due to arrive, I stood in my foyer, looking at my reflection in the ornate mirror that had been my first luxury purchase. You've got this, I whispered to myself. Then the doorbell rang, and I took a deep breath before walking toward the door that separated my carefully built present from my painful past. The security monitor showed 5 people standing at my front door: Mom, Richard, Brittany, Jessica, and Uncle Bob. My hand hovered over the intercom button for a moment as I steeled myself. Then I pressed the button to unlock the gate and watched them make their way up the winding path to my front door. Their expressions as they took in the manicured grounds and the modern architecture of my home ranged from awe to barely concealed envy. I opened the door before they could ring the bell again, standing tall in the entrance to my home. "Amanda." Mom stepped forward first, arms outstretched as if the last decade of rejection had never happened. "You look wonderful." She embraced me stiffly. I returned the hug with equal formality, noting how much she had aged. The vibrant woman who had once commanded classrooms of second graders now looked tired, her hair completely gray, her posture slightly stooped. "Thank you for having us," Jessica said, genuine warmth in her voice that contrasted with the awkward tension emanating from the others. "Please come in," I said, stepping aside to let them enter. Their reactions to my home's interior were almost comical. Richard's eyes widened as he took in the soaring ceilings, designer furniture, and floor-to-ceiling windows showcasing panoramic views of the city. Brittany's mouth actually dropped open when she saw the custom crystal chandelier hanging in the two-story foyer. "This is quite a place you have," Richard managed, his voice strained with what I recognized as forced politeness. "Thank you," I replied simply. "The sitting room is this way." I led them through to my favorite room in the house, a comfortable but elegant space with plush seating arranged to facilitate conversation while highlighting the stunning view. On the coffee table, I'd arranged a simple spread of refreshments catered by one of San Francisco's most exclusive restaurants, nothing showy, but clearly high quality. "You've done well for yourself," Uncle Bob commented, helping himself to a miniature quiche. "Very well indeed." "Secure space has been successful beyond my expectations," I acknowledged, taking a seat in my favorite armchair, positioned subtly higher than the other seating options. A small power move, but one that reminded me this was my home, my territory. As everyone settled with refreshments, an uncomfortable silence fell over the room. It was Mom who finally broke it. "Amanda, we've missed you so much," she said, tears forming in her eyes. "All these years, not knowing how you were doing, if you were okay." The statement was so revisionist that I nearly laughed. "You could have called," I replied evenly. "My number hasn't changed in 10 years. "We thought you wanted space," Richard interjected. "After how things ended at your grandfather's birthday party. After you asked me to leave for disrupting the celebration by pointing out how I'd been excluded from family events for years. I finished for him." "Yes, I remember that differently too." Another awkward silence descended. Jessica shot me an apologetic look. "The important thing is that we're here now," Brittany said with a bright smile that didn't reach her eyes. She was still beautiful, but her carefully applied makeup couldn't hide the strain of recent years. "Families should stick together, right?" "Interesting perspective," I observed. "What changed?" Richard cleared his throat. "Amanda, I've always admired your directness. So, let me be direct too. We've had some financial setbacks recently." Richard's real estate development didn't go as planned, Mom explained, patting his hand supportively. "The timing of the market just wasn't in our favor." "The timing of the market," I repeated. Not the fact that he leveraged everything on a single high-risk investment and convinced family members to do the same? Uncle Bob shifted uncomfortably. "We all made our own decisions," he muttered, though his expression suggested otherwise. "The point is," Richard continued, shooting Uncle Bob a warning look, "we've been exploring options to recover, and we've developed an exciting business opportunity. Something that could benefit the entire family." There was the real reason for this reunion. Not reconciliation, not genuine remorse, but a sales pitch. "What kind of opportunity?" I asked, curiosity overcoming my irritation. Richard's face lit up at what he perceived as interest. "A family investment firm. With your tech background and our business experience, we could create something special. We already have the business plan drafted." "And you need capital," I finished for him. "Seed funding," he corrected quickly. "An initial investment to get things off the ground. With your connections in the venture capital world, plus some startup capital, we could launch within months." I took a sip of my water, using the moment to process the audacity of their request. After years of exclusion and dismissal, they expected me to hand over money and connections to the very people who had rejected me. "How much are you looking for?" I asked, my tone neutral. Richard named a figure that would have been significant for most people, but represented less than a month of my company's operating budget. "Plus introductions to some of your investor contacts, of course." "Of course," I echoed. "And what exactly would this family investment firm do?" As Richard launched into a vague explanation about leveraging family connections and synergistic opportunities, I studied the faces around me. Mom looked hopeful but embarrassed. Brittany was watching me calculatingly, as if assessing how convinced I was. Uncle Bob was eyeing the expensive artwork on my walls like he was mentally appraising it. Only Jessica looked genuinely uncomfortable with the entire situation. I held up a hand to stop Richard's increasingly enthusiastic pitch. "Let me make sure I understand correctly. After excluding me from family events for a decade, spreading lies about me abandoning the family, and making it clear I wasn't welcome, you now want me to invest a significant sum in a vague business venture with no clear revenue model, run by people with a recent history of financial mismanagement." The room fell silent. Richard's confident smile faltered. "That's not fair, Amanda," Mom said quietly. "We've always cared about you." "Have you?" I challenged. "Because I have copies of group text messages where you planned family events specifically when I couldn't attend. I have screenshots of conversations mocking my career and education. I have years of evidence showing exactly how much this family cared about me." Brittany's face flushed. "You're twisting things. We reached out because we want to rebuild our relationship. The business opportunity is secondary." "Is it?" I stood and walked to a side table where I'd placed a folder. "Because according to the documents Jessica shared with me, most of you are facing bankruptcy or foreclosure. Mom needs expensive medical treatments. Uncle Bob is facing potential legal troubles. This isn't about rebuilding relationships, it's about financial desperation. You went behind our backs?" Richard turned to Jessica, fury replacing his salesman's smile. Jessica straightened her shoulders. "I told Amanda the truth. Something this family hasn't done in a very long time. The truth," I continued, "is that you're not here for reconciliation. You're here because you've exhausted all other options and decided I'm your last resort. The irony is, if you had come honestly, if you had acknowledged the past and shown genuine remorse, I might have been willing to help, at least with Mom's medical expenses." "We can be honest," Richard said quickly, desperation creeping into his voice. "We've made mistakes, Amanda. We should have been more inclusive, more supportive of your career." "More inclusive?" I repeated incredulously. "You systematically excluded me from every significant family event for years. You belittled my education and career at every opportunity. You allowed Brittany to manipulate everyone against me without consequence." "That's not true," Brittany protested. "You were always so difficult, so convinced everyone was against you." "Was I?" I interrupted, pressing a button on my phone. Suddenly, Brittany's voice filled the room from the hidden speakers, a recording from years ago at my grandfather's birthday party. "She's only here because she heard Grandpa has updated his will. She hasn't bothered with any of us for years, and suddenly she shows up? Please. She's always been calculating." I pressed another button and Richard's voice played next. "Book smarts don't translate to real-world success. Amanda's smart enough, but she lacks Brittany's social intelligence. That's what really matters in business." One by one, I played recordings and displayed screenshots on the large TV screen that descended from the ceiling, years of evidence documenting their systematic exclusion and cruel comments. Mom's face grew paler with each new piece of evidence. Uncle Bob stared at his shoes. Brittany's expression morphed from indignation to shock to fury. "You've been spying on us?" she finally sputtered. "No, Brittany. I've been protecting myself by documenting how I've been treated. There's a difference." I turned off the display. "I didn't come here looking for revenge. I built my life to spite you, not to spite you. But I will not be manipulated or guilt into financing people who've shown me nothing but contempt. Richard stood abruptly. This is absurd. We came here in good faith. Did you? I challenged. Because the business plan you brought shows you intend to use my name and reputation to attract investors, but the ownership structure gives me minimal equity and no decision-making authority. That doesn't look like good faith to me. His face confirmed what I already knew. They had intended to use me, then push me aside once they had what they wanted. I think it's time for you to leave, I said quietly. Amanda, please, Mom stepped forward, genuine tears streaming down her face now. I know we've made mistakes. Mistakes? I interrupted. A mistake is forgetting a birthday or saying something thoughtless in anger. What you did was a sustained campaign of exclusion and emotional abuse spanning years. That's not a mistake, it's a choice. Multiple choices made day after day. Mom flinched as if I'd slapped her. For a moment, I saw real recognition in her eyes, perhaps the first genuine acknowledgement of what they had done. I'll help with your medical expenses, I told her. Not because you deserve it, but because I refuse to be the person you tried to make me into, someone who abandons family when it's inconvenient. But there will be conditions, and there will be boundaries. And they start with honesty about what happened. The room fell silent. Jessica was the first to speak. Thank you, Amanda, she said softly. That's more than generous, considering everything. Richard looked like he wanted to argue further, but the fight seemed to drain out of him as he realized the leverage he thought he had didn't exist. Brittany was seething, but even she seemed to recognize the futility of further manipulation. I'll be in touch about the medical arrangements, I told Mom as I escorted them to the door. The rest of you need to leave now. As they filed out, shoulders slumped in defeat, I felt no triumph, only a quiet certainty that I had finally stood up for myself in a way my younger self never could. I had faced my past without being consumed by it. I had set boundaries without seeking revenge. I had offered compassion without sacrificing self-respect. Standing in my doorway, watching them walk down the path toward their rented economy car, I realized I was finally free, not because they had released me, but because I had released myself from needing their approval or acceptance. Goodbye, I whispered, though they couldn't hear me. Then I closed the door on my past and turned back to the life I had built for myself. The days following the confrontation felt surreal. I had imagined various scenarios of facing my family for years, but the reality, their transparent attempt to use me after years of rejection, was both more painful and more liberating than I had anticipated. I had finally spoken my truth to the people who had shaped so much of my pain, and the world hadn't ended. Instead, I felt lighter, as if naming the hurt had begun to dissolve its power over me. How are you feeling? David asked that evening as we sat on my terrace, watching the city lights flicker on below us. Strangely peaceful, I admitted. For so long, I imagined that confronting them would be this huge, dramatic moment that would either fix everything or destroy me completely. But it wasn't either of those things. It was just clarifying. Clarity is underrated, he said, taking my hand. It's hard to move forward when you're surrounded by fog. I spent the following week processing the encounter with Dr. Larson, who helped me navigate the complex emotions it had stirred up. You showed remarkable strength, she observed. Not just in standing your ground, but in offering compassion where you could without compromising your boundaries. I meant what I said about Mom's medical expenses, I told her. I can't just turn my back on that, even after everything. That speaks to your character, not hers, Dr. Larson replied. You're choosing to act according to your values, not in reaction to how you've been treated. That's profound growth. True to my word, I arranged for Mom's medical expenses to be covered through a healthcare fund I established with specific parameters. She would receive the care she needed, but the arrangement included boundaries, no direct financial transfers to her or Richard, no blank checks, just payment of legitimate medical expenses. What I hadn't expected was how the family would fracture in the aftermath of our confrontation. Jessica was the first to reach out independently, sending a heartfelt email 3 days after the meeting. "I can't express how sorry I am for my part in all this," she wrote. "Watching you stand up for yourself made me realize how complicit I've been in the family dynamics by staying silent. I don't expect forgiveness, but I want you to know I'm making changes in how I engage with the toxicity." Her message seemed genuine, lacking the desperation or calculation that had characterized the family visit. We began a cautious correspondence that gradually evolved into regular video calls. Jessica was working as a graphic designer and trying to distance herself from Richard's influence, a journey I understood all too well. To my surprise, two of my cousins, Rachel and Michael, also reached out separately. They had heard about the confrontation and, in Michael's words, finally got the courage to break the party line about you. Both had experienced their own versions of family manipulation, though not to the extent I had. Our conversations revealed how thoroughly Richard and Brittany had controlled the family narrative, positioning me as ungrateful and callous while portraying themselves as victims of my ambition. "They told everyone you refused to help with Grandpa's medical bills," Rachel confessed during our first call. "I believed it for years until I found out he was on Medicare the whole time and never needed financial help." These revelations, while painful, confirmed what I had long suspected. My exclusion had been deliberate and orchestrated, not a series of unfortunate misunderstandings. Mom's response to the confrontation surprised me most. 2 weeks after our meeting, she requested a private conversation without Richard present. We met at a neutral location, a quiet tea room halfway between my home and hers. She looked smaller somehow, without Richard's dominating presence beside her. The medical treatments had begun, and some color had returned to her cheeks, but there was a fragility to her that I hadn't noticed before. "Thank you for meeting me," she began, hands wrapped tightly around her teacup. "And thank you for the medical care. It's more than I deserve." "Everyone deserves health care," I replied neutrally. "Amanda," she hesitated, then continued, "I've been doing a lot of thinking since seeing you. Those recordings, the text messages. I knew some of it was happening, but I told myself it wasn't as bad as it seemed. That you were just busy with your own life. It's easier to believe that than to confront the truth," I acknowledged. "Yes," she whispered. "But seeing it all laid out like that, hearing my own silence, when I should have defended you, I can't hide from it anymore." Her eyes filled with tears. "I failed you as a mother. I chose a comfortable life with Richard over standing up for my own daughter." Her admission cracked something open inside me, not forgiveness exactly, but a pathway toward it. "Why?" I asked simply. "Why did you let it happen?" "After your father left, I was so afraid of being alone, of struggling financially again," she explained. "Richard offered security, status, a life I never thought I could have. And then Brittany started her campaign against you, and Richard always took her side, and I convinced myself it wasn't that bad. That you were strong and didn't need me the way I needed them." She wiped away tears. "I was a coward, Amanda. And you paid the price for my cowardice." Her honesty, however belated, was the first step in a long, complicated journey of rebuilding. We didn't leave that tea shop magically reconciled, but we left with a fragile understanding, a commitment to honesty that had been absent for too long. Brittany's response took a different path. Within days of the confrontation, she launched a social media campaign painting herself as the victim of a vindictive stepsister. Posts about family loyalty and blood over success appeared regularly, thinly veiled references to me without ever naming me directly. When these generated insufficient sympathy, she pivoted to positioning herself as an independent entrepreneur battling corporate giants, a narrative that rang hollow given her history of dependence on Richard's finances. I chose not to engage with her manufactured drama. My company's social media team monitored for any direct allegations that might require legal attention, but otherwise, I let her performance play out to its dwindling audience. As Jessica later informed me, Brittany's influencer aspirations were floundering as brands became increasingly wary of her inconsistent engagement metrics and questionable authenticity. Richard, predictably, retreated into bitterness. He made one final attempt at accessing my resources, a formal business proposal sent via certified mail, as if official letterhead could disguise the same flawed plan I had already rejected. When that failed, he apparently told family members I had turned my back on the family that raised me. The irony was not lost on those who had witnessed his years of undermining and exclusion. 6 months after the confrontation, I hosted a small dinner at my home for the family members who had shown genuine remorse and effort toward reconciliation: Mom, Jessica, Rachel, and Michael. It was tentative and occasionally awkward, but also healing in ways I hadn't anticipated. "I never thought I'd be welcome in your home again," Mom said as I showed her my rooftop garden. "I never thought you'd want me here. I never thought you'd acknowledge what happened," I replied honestly. We're both adjusting to new realities. That evening established the template for our rebuilt relationships. Honest but measured, healing but not ignoring the past. I maintained clear boundaries, refusing to discuss financial assistance beyond Mom's medical care or to be drawn into family drama. Those who couldn't respect these boundaries gradually filtered themselves out of my life again. Meanwhile, my chosen family continued to grow and flourish. Secure Space expanded internationally, bringing new colleagues and connections into my life. David and I moved from dating to a deeper commitment, his steady presence a daily reminder that love didn't have to be conditional or performative. My foundation, initially created to help young women in tech, became a passion project that reconnected me with my original love of programming and mentorship. Jessica, with her design background, eventually joined the foundation, bringing her creativity to our educational materials and websites. Our professional collaboration healed aspects of our relationship that conversation alone couldn't touch. David proposed on the anniversary of our first meeting, during a private dinner on my terrace overlooking the city. His proposal wasn't about grand gestures, but about the quiet certainty we had built together. "I want to build a family with you," he said, holding the ring. "Not the kind you were born into, but the kind we choose every day." I said yes without hesitation. Our wedding was intimate but joyful. My chosen family filled the front rows, Samantha as my maid of honor, my executive team and foundation colleagues beaming with genuine happiness for us. The reconciled family members sat a few rows back, present but not centered, part of my life but not defining it. Mom watched with tears in her eyes as I walked myself down the aisle, a choice that symbolized my journey from seeking approval to standing firmly in my own worth. At the reception, she approached me with uncharacteristic hesitation. "I'm so proud of the woman you've become, Amanda," she said softly. "Not because of your success or this beautiful wedding, but because of your strength. You built this life despite every obstacle, including those I helped create." Her acknowledgement was the gift I had once desperately craved and now accepted with peaceful appreciation rather than desperate relief. "Thank you for being here today," I replied, meaning it sincerely. "For showing up now, even if you couldn't before." As David and I prepared to leave for our honeymoon, I looked around at the gathering, the people who had chosen to love me and those who were learning how, the relationships that had been tested and broken and carefully rebuilt, the connections that had formed in unexpected places and times. My journey from rejection to self-worth hadn't followed the path I had imagined as that hurt young woman crying in her car after Thanksgiving. The success I had achieved wasn't meaningful because it proved my family wrong, but because it had allowed me to discover who I was beyond their limited vision of me. The most powerful moment hadn't been when I opened my door to their shocked faces at my mansion. It had been every day I chose to keep that door open to authentic connection while protecting the life and self-worth I had built. "Ready to go?" David asked, taking my hand. I took one last look at the gathering, my past and present converging in a way I never thought possible, and nodded. "I'm ready." Sometimes the most powerful thing isn't who you let in, but knowing you're worthy of protecting who you are. What would you have done in my situation? Would you have helped your family after years of rejection or maintained stricter boundaries? Share your thoughts in the comments below. And if you've ever had to rebuild relationships after betrayal, I'd love to hear your stories. Don't forget to like and subscribe if this resonated with you, and share with someone who might need to hear that their worth isn't determined by those who couldn't see it. Thank you for listening to my story. May you always know your true value, whether others recognize it or not.